pay $2,000 rent, or get out." Those words weren't whispered in private. They were shouted by my own father in front of 30 guests, right in the middle of my mom's birthday party. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the soft music, all of it froze. Forks hung midair, eyes locked on me. And then my brother leaned back in his chair, smirked like a villain in a cheap movie, and said, "Good luck with that, little sister." Heat rose in my chest, my palms slick against the napkin in my lap. For weeks, I had poured myself into this party. I'd chosen the flowers, the music, the food, the candles. I had planned every detail, thinking maybe, just maybe, they'd finally notice me. Instead, they used my moment of effort as a stage to humiliate me. I looked at my mother, searching for even a flicker of defense, but her gaze slid past me as if I didn't exist. I could hear my pulse in my ears, every beat pounding against the weight of years I'd been made invisible. But here's the twist. What they didn't know was that I had been preparing for this very moment. While they thought I was still under their roof, still tied to their bills, still their scapegoat, I had already cut the strings. Piece by piece, dollar by dollar, I had built a life they didn't know about. So I stood up, calm. No tears, no begging, no arguing. Just a quiet dignity they had never seen in me before. I laid my napkin on the table, grabbed my purse, and walked straight out of that restaurant. My heels clicked across the polished floor, echoing louder than my father's threat. Not one of them called me back. Not one. What they also didn't know was that while they were busy plotting to control me, I had been digging into their secrets. Money trails, lies, things they never expected me to find. And walking out that door wasn't the end, it was the beginning. Because this wasn't just about rent. This was about control. And they were about to regret underestimating me. If you've ever been pushed to your limit by family or forced to walk away for your own peace, tell me your story in the comments. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because trust me, you'll want to see how this revenge unfolds. The night I walked out of that party, I didn't go back to their house. Not for clothes, not for keepsakes, not for anything. Because months earlier, I'd already started moving things out in secret, one box at a time, hidden in the trunk of my car. By the time Dad screamed at me in front of everyone, my new place was ready. I pulled into the driveway of the small house I'd bought on the edge of town. The porch light flickered, the paint was chipped, but it was mine. My name on the deed, my locks on the door. No one could take it from me. I remember unlocking the door that night, stepping inside and exhaling like I'd been holding my breath for 30 years. The silence was heavy, but for the first time it was peaceful. No slammed doors, no mocking laughter. No being compared to my brother. Just me. A half-empty living room, a coffee mug left on the counter, and freedom. But freedom comes with responsibility, and I knew I had to cut every single tie that bound me to them. That meant bills, accounts, utilities. They'd been feeding off me for years. Every month I'd decover family expenses, while Dad claimed he was short on cash and my brother Scott forgot to pay his share. I'd been the invisible backbone, and they never once thanked me. The next morning, I brewed a cheap cup of instant coffee, sat at my folding table, and opened my laptop. My hands trembled as I logged into the shared bank account. At first, it looked normal. Rent payments, groceries, utilities, but then little things stood out. $200 at an electronics store, $150 at a bar, $400 for a car service in a city I hadn't even visited. My chest tightened. Those weren't mine. I scrolled further. Dozens of transactions I didn't recognize, stretching back months. My fingers hovered over the mouse, icy realization sinking in. They'd been draining my money behind my back. Not just once, not just by mistake. Repeatedly. My father had shouted about $2,000 rent like I was some burden, while they were already using my name, my accounts, my money, to fund their lives. And then, buried in the transactions, I saw something that made my breath catch. A loan. $50,000. In my name. Approved 6 months ago. And I had never signed a single paper. My hands went cold as I stared at the screen. A $50,000 loan. Approved in my name, my address, my social security number. All of it matched me, but I had never signed for this. I called the bank immediately, my voice shaky but firm. After a long wait, a representative confirmed it. Yes, Ms. Walsh, this loan is registered under your profile. Payments are already overdue. You are listed as the primary borrower. My stomach twisted. That's impossible, I whispered. I never applied for this loan. The representative paused, then explained that the signature on file looked suspicious, sloppy, almost like a rushed attempt at my handwriting. My vision blurred with rage. My father had access to all my documents, my ID, my social security, even old bills. He'd always brushed off questions about money with vague excuses, late-night calls, tight finances. Now it was clear. He had forged my name to dig himself out of debt. And the worst part? He thought I'd never find out. I hung up, my pulse racing. I wasn't just angry. I was done being their safety net. The years of covering bills, paying their utilities, picking up after Scott's reckless spending, none of it mattered to them. I was just a walking wallet. That night, I made a choice. If they wanted me to pay $2,000 rent or get out, I'd give them exactly what they asked for. I would cut myself out of their lives completely. The next morning, I sat down at my laptop again. One by one, I removed my name from every shared account. Electricity, internet, car insurance. I called each company, verified my identity, and disconnected. The internet was the last straw. Dad had set it up years ago, but I'd been the one paying the bill. When I canceled it, the agent asked, "Are you sure? This will cut off service to the entire household." "Yes," I said. My voice didn't even shake. An hour later, my phone buzzed. A text from Scott lit up the screen. "Wi-Fi's down. Fix it. Now. No context, no apology, just another demand." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering. For years, I would have caved, but not this time. I typed back 2 words. "Not my problem." I hit send. My chest burned with adrenaline, but also relief. And then another bank alert appeared. This time, for a brand new 4K TV. Over $2,000 charged to the frozen account, and I knew exactly who had done it. The $2,300 charge for the TV wasn't just suspicious, it was a slap in the face. A frozen account wasn't supposed to work. But someone had found a loophole, and all signs pointed to Scott. I dug deeper, scrolling through every line of the bank statement. It was like unraveling a thread that just kept pulling. $400 at a designer clothing store. $600 for a business dinner. Hadazid $800 for plane tickets to Paris. And then, as if mocking me, a picture on Scott's social media. Him grinning in front of a sleek new flat screen. Caption, "Living large, work hard, play harder." My jaw tightened. He wasn't even hiding it. I saved everything. Screenshots of the charges, his posts, the dates, the captions. I created a folder labeled Evidence on my laptop. Every click felt like loading ammunition. When I'd gathered enough, I drafted an email to Dad, Mom, and Scott. My hands didn't shake this time. I found unauthorized charges. $2,300 for a TV, $2,800 for flights, hundreds more in reckless spending. If this doesn't stop immediately, I'll pursue legal action. Fraud, theft, forgery, it's all documented. Do not test me. I attached the screenshots and hit send. My chest rose and fell in sharp bursts. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't begging them to see me, I was warning them to fear me. But of course, Scott couldn't resist. An hour later, he posted again. This time a jab aimed directly at me. "Some people are so selfish. Abandoning family over a few bucks. Guess who thinks she's too good for us now?" The comments poured in. Friends of his chimed in with insults. Ungrateful, spoiled, traitor. I took screenshots of every single one. My lawyer friend's words echoed in my mind. Document everything. I didn't reply. Not online. Not by text. Let him think he was winning. Let him laugh with his friends. Because what Scott didn't know was that every smug post, every careless word, was helping me build the strongest case of my life. And just when I thought I had enough, a knock sounded at my door. When I peered through the peephole, my stomach dropped. It was Aunt Nancy, and she was holding a thick envelope. Aunt Nancy didn't usually show up unannounced. She was the type to call, to check, to make sure she wasn't intruding. But tonight she stood at my door, her coat damp from the drizzle, clutching a thick manila envelope like it weighed 100 pounds. "Caitlin," she said, her voice low but urgent. "We need to talk." I let her in, my pulse racing. She sat at my kitchen table, smoothed the envelope flat, and pushed it toward me. "You deserve to know the truth," she whispered. My fingers trembled as I opened it. The first page was a letterhead from a tech company in Raleigh, dated nearly a year ago. It was addressed to me. A job offer, high salary, full benefits. A chance to finally break free from the grind of covering my family's mess. But I'd never seen it. Nancy's eyes darkened. "Your dad and Scott intercepted it. They replied on your behalf, told the company you weren't interested, said you needed to stay here to help family." I froze, scanning the email threads she'd printed. There it was, Dad's email declining on my behalf, Scott chiming in with smug instructions. Keep her in line. My stomach turned. They hadn't just stolen money from me. They'd stolen my future. Nancy slid another document across the table, a copy of Grandma Evelyn's will. "She left you something," Nancy said, her voice softening. "Not money, exactly, but protection. She knew how your parents favored Scott. She worried they'd strip you of everything, so she set aside a trust. It's still there, untouched, but your dad never told you." I flipped through the papers. Grandma's handwriting filled the margins, small notes reminding the lawyer that the trust was only for me. Not Mom, not Dad, certainly not Scott. Tears pricked my eyes. Grandma had believed in me even when the rest of them hadn't. Nancy leaned forward, her voice steady. "She wanted you to have a way out, Caitlin, to build something of your own, away from their control. I've kept this secret long enough. It's time you used it." For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt something other than anger. I felt power. The betrayal was deeper than I ever imagined, but so was the leverage I now held, because if Dad and Scott thought they could keep me small, they were about to find out how wrong they were. The next morning, I walked into a modest office downtown, the kind lined with oak bookshelves and the faint smell of paper and ink. The brass nameplate on the door read, "Margaret Harper, attorney at law. Grandma Evelyn's lawyer." She stood when I entered, a tall woman with silver hair pulled into a neat bun and sharp eyes that studied me like she'd been expecting this moment for years. "Caitlin Walsh," she said, extending her hand. "Your grandmother spoke of you often. Sit down. We have a lot to cover." I slid the envelope across her desk, my heart thudding. Bank statements, the forged loan in my name, Scott's reckless charges, Dad's emails declining my job offer, and finally, Grandma's trust. Margaret flipped through each page with the precision of a surgeon, occasionally nodding, her lips pressed into a thin line. When she finally set the papers down, she leaned back in her chair. "This," she said, tapping the trust papers, "is airtight. Your grandmother was deliberate. She instructed me to keep these safe until the day you needed them. And based on what you've shown me," she gestured at the evidence, "that day is now." Her words settled over me like armor. Margaret explained the trust. $15,000 sitting untouched in a savings account, protected from my parents' interference. Enough to give me breathing room and leverage. "But that's not all," she added. "These forged documents and unauthorized charges? This isn't just family drama, Caitlin. It's fraud. Possibly criminal." The word criminal hung in the air like a storm cloud. I thought of Dad, casually forging my name on a $50,000 loan. Of Scott, posting pictures of his new TV bought with my account. Of Mom, silent through it all. My fists tightened in my lap, nails digging into my skin. Margaret slid me a blank notepad. "Document everything. Dates, screenshots, social media posts. Build a timeline. If they push you, we'll file both civil and criminal charges." I nodded, scribbling notes furiously. My hands shook, not from fear this time, but from adrenaline. Walking out of that office, the morning air felt different. Sharper, charged. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was planning. They thought they could erase me, bury me in silence and debt. But now, I had the law, Grandma's trust, and the truth on my side. And I was done playing nice. I stood in their living room, folder in hand, my pulse steady despite the storm inside me. Mom's lavender candles flickered on the mantel, masking the tension in the air. Dad lounged on the couch with a newspaper, pretending not to notice me. Scott sprawled in an armchair, phone in hand, smug as ever. Mom stirred a pot in the kitchen, acting like this was just another evening. I dropped the folder on the coffee table with a heavy thud. Papers fanned out, bank statements, screenshots, the forged $50,000 loan, Scott's lavish purchases, and the job offer they'd hidden from me. "We need to talk," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet. Dad lowered his paper, his jaw tightening. Mom's spoon stilled midair. Scott smirked, leaning back. "This should be good," he muttered. I pointed to the loan documents. "You forged my name. $50,000, taken without my consent. That's fraud." My finger moved to Scott's receipts. "And you. TVs, flights to Paris, designer jackets. All with my money. That's theft." Scott rolled his eyes. "You're blowing this out of proportion." I didn't flinch. "I've documented everything. Every charge, every signature, every post you bragged about online. If this continues, if you so much as touch my name or accounts again, I'll take it to court. Fraud, forgery, theft. It's all right here." Dad's face reddened, his mouth opening, then closing. Mom pressed a hand to her lips, eyes darting away. Only Scott dared laugh, sharp and bitter. "So you're cutting us off? Good luck surviving without us." I met his eyes, calm, steady. "I already am." The silence that followed was suffocating. They weren't used to me standing tall, refusing to bow. They knew they'd been caught, and their silence was louder than any denial. I gathered the folder, sliding the papers back inside. "This ends tonight," I said, heading for the door. Behind me, Mom's voice cracked. "Caitlin, wait!" But I didn't. The door clicked shut behind me, the cool night air rushing in like freedom. My heart pounded, but it wasn't fear. It was power. For the first time in years, I wasn't their scapegoat. I was done being invisible. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Ms. Harper's office, striping the wooden desk with golden lines. My palms were slick with nerves as I sat across from her. She studied me for a moment, then reached into a drawer and placed a thick envelope in front of me. "Your grandmother left this for you," she said softly. "She wanted it delivered when you were ready." I froze. My grandmother had been the only one who ever truly saw me. The only one who noticed when I was breaking inside while everyone else ignored me. I picked up the envelope, tracing her familiar handwriting on the seal. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a handwritten letter and a set of legal documents. The letter came first, written in her looping, steady script. "Caitlin, I've watched how your parents and brother treated you. I know the weight you carry, but you are stronger than they'll ever admit. I set aside something for you. Not just money, but freedom. Use it wisely. Use it to choose yourself. Be fierce. Be free." Tears stung my eyes. I could almost hear her voice warm and steady, as if she were sitting right there with me. Beneath the letter was the truth. A trust account worth $15,000, locked away until I was 30. My father had never mentioned it. Of course he hadn't. If he'd known, he would have twisted it, just like he twisted everything else. But my grandmother had been smart. The trust was airtight, legally protected so that only I could access it. Ms. Harper leaned forward, her tone steady and reassuring. "This money is yours, Caitlin. Your grandmother made sure it couldn't be touched by anyone else. It can give you a foundation, a way to move forward while you fight back." I pressed the documents against my chest, my heartbeat pounding in rhythm with the weight of her words. For the first time in months, I felt something I thought I'd lost. Hope. This wasn't just money. It was my grandmother's faith in me. Proof that someone had always believed in my worth, even when my parents didn't. I wiped my eyes, my voice firmer than it had been in weeks. They thought they'd broken me, but Grandma gave me the strength to rise. Ms. Harper nodded. "And now you finally have leverage." I left her office clutching that envelope like a lifeline, the words "be fierce, be free," echoing in my mind. But I had no idea that the moment I touched that trust, my family would come storming back into my life, more desperate than ever. The following week, I walked into my new apartment carrying the weight of freedom and fear at the same time. The trust money was officially transferred into my account. Mine. Untouchable. For the first time, I could breathe. I ordered new furniture, set up a small workspace, and started mapping out a future that was finally mine. But peace, I was learning, never lasted long in my family. It started with the phone calls. Unknown numbers lighting up my screen, voicemail after voicemail. At first, I ignored them. Then came the texts, angrier, shorter, more desperate. We need to talk. You can't keep this up. You owe us. I blocked one number and 3 more appeared. By Friday night, there was no more hiding. A knock shook my door, heavy and relentless. My stomach tightened. Through the peephole, I saw them. My parents, red-faced and furious, with Scott lingering behind like a shadow. I opened the door just wide enough to speak. "What do you want?" My voice was steady, but my pulse thundered in my ears. Dad shoved his way forward, his tone booming. "We know about the money. $15,000. Your grandmother left it for the family, not for you to waste on your little projects." Mom's voice followed, sharp and cutting. "Your brother needs that money to pay off debts. You're being selfish again, Caitlin. Hand it over." Scott smirked, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. "Come on, sis. You're not going to blow it on your independence fantasy, are you? Think bigger. Think about family." Something inside me snapped. I stepped fully into the doorway, blocking their entrance. "Family? You forged my name on a loan. You drained our accounts. You humiliated me in front of 30 people at a party. And now you want my grandmother's gift?" I held their gaze, my voice trembling with anger but not fear. "Not this time. You don't get a single cent." For a second, silence filled the hallway. My dad's jaw clenched, his knuckles whitening at his side. Mom's eyes darted nervously, her face pale. Scott muttered under his breath, "Ungrateful little—" I cut him off, raising my voice. "No. I'm done being your wallet. I'm done being invisible. That money is mine, legally. You have no power here." Their stares burned into me, but for the first time I didn't flinch. I slammed the door shut, the lock clicking like a final verdict, but I knew this wasn't the end. If they'd come to my door once, they'd come again. And the next time, they wouldn't just come begging. They'd come ready for war. The morning after my lawyer finalized the paperwork, I woke up with a strange calm in my chest. For months, I had carried the weight of my family's betrayal, their demands, their lies, their theft. But now it was time to deliver the final blow. I walked into my parents' house one last time, folder in hand, heart steady. The living room still smelled of lavender candles, but the air felt thick with tension. My dad looked up from his newspaper. My mom froze at the sink, and Scott, slouched on the couch scrolling through his phone, barely glanced at me. They had no idea what was coming. I placed the folder on the coffee table, opening it slowly, deliberately. One by one, I laid out the evidence. The $50,000 forged loan in my name, the bank statements showing Scott's reckless purchases, the intercepted job offer that could have changed my future, and finally my grandmother's trust documents proving she had left me the freedom they tried to bury. "You lied, you stole, you humiliated me," I said, my voice firm but calm. "And you thought I'd never fight back. But this—" I tapped the papers. "This is the end." For a moment, no one moved. My mom's eyes welled with tears, but she said nothing. My dad's face turned red, his jaw tightening as if anger could undo the truth. "And Scott—" Scott laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "You think anyone's going to believe you?" He spat. I leaned forward, meeting his eyes. "They already do. The lawyer has everything. If you or Dad try to contact me again, if you touch anything that belongs to me, you'll face charges for fraud and theft. I'm done playing your games." The silence that followed was heavy, final. I gathered my folder, stood tall, and walked out without looking back. Their voices, their excuses, their manipulations, none of it mattered anymore. That evening, I sat in my small office at Rise Free, the nonprofit I had built from the ashes of their betrayal. My grandmother's words echoed in my mind. Be fierce. Be free. For the first time in years, I felt exactly that. I had turned their cruelty into my strength, their betrayal into my fuel, and their lies into my victory. Justice had been served, not by revenge alone, but by carving out a life they could never take from me again. And as I looked into the camera, ready to share my story with the world, I asked, "What about you? What's the most satisfying moment of justice you've ever seen?" Tell me in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories like this one. Because this wasn't just my ending. It was a reminder. Sometimes, the only way to win is to finally walk away.